Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sandra Wilder. I'm a STEM relationship manager for Ohio STEM Learning Network, which is managed by Battelle. With us today are also Rob Evans and Zach Ames from Battelle, as well as the director of the Ohio STEM Learning Network, Kelly Geyer Evans. So hopefully they're waving. Our partners are here as well, and you'll have a chance to ask them questions. So just hold on tight. We have a really, hopefully, informative hour about Design Challenge. So Kelly already asked you to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. If you haven't had a chance to do that, please do so. We do want to say that we appreciate you being here today. Some of you even didn't have school today, and you're still here. So we promise to make this hour worthwhile. So our goals for today. Well, the first goal is to introduce or reintroduce the OSLN Design Challenge. Some of you are maybe completely new to Design Challenge and you're like, oh my God, what is this? And some of you are returning design thinkers, and you are going to be our advocates and supporting colleagues who are embarking on this journey for the first time this year. We would really like you to consider the benefits of engaging in the Design Challenge, and we'll talk about that today. We would like you to imagine what the Design Challenge will look like in your classroom. And of course, leave today knowing what are the supports and resources available to you. You are not going to go through this alone. We are very invested in this program, and we provide a lot of resources and supports. So I think it's really, really important that we are in the right mindset when it comes to this meet. After all, this is all about design thinking. So hopefully everyone is ready to answer the following question. We're going to use chat. So make sure your typing skills are ready to be applied. Here we go. In the chat, I would like you to make your prediction as to what the next line may be. And if you see others typing the same thing, that's okay. That just means that you are thinking along the same lines. And I am going to be quiet for about 20 seconds. Okay, Mary is the brave one. I love that. Thank you, Abby. What do you think? And come on, let's be brave. Stephen, okay. Kim is still thinking. Let me give you 2 more seconds. And if you see others' responses, you can say, hey, I like how they're thinking. I agree. Don't know how they came up with that, but I agree. Or you disagree, but you're not sure what that is. So lots of thinking here, lots of thinking. I don't know if you've seen this one before. It's a good one to do with students. Younger they are, faster they come up with the answer. So if you're a high school teacher, this is a good one to do. If you have a little bit of time at the end of the class and you don't know what to do with them, this will keep them occupied. Little ones come up with the answers pretty quickly. So I'm going to pause it here. And if you're still thinking about it, please pause. We'll come back to it in about 45 minutes or so. But I want you right now to think about, why am I asking you this? I know, Kelly, I'm so sorry. Why am I asking you this? Give me 1 word, 2 word response in the chat, because how is this connected to what we're supposed to talk about? Okay, Monica thinks I want you to think critically. She's right. What else? Stimulate brain activity. Stretching the brain. Yep. Thinking all persistence, thinking outside of the box. Oh my God, you are really good at this. And I'm going to add to productive struggle. Oh my God, my favorite word. I'm going to add to it two things. And I think some of you have already said it. I really wanted you to see an ill-defined problem. And I say that as a compliment. The best problems are ill-defined. I mean, after all, think about everyday life. Nothing is simple. Nothing. And I'm going to say that with a confidence. Nothing is simple. So problems around us are ill-defined, like this one. And I really wanted you to see a problem that you wouldn't really know if you have to use a certain subject. Now, if you're a math person, and I know there's at least one math coach out there because I saw a name pop up. If you're a math person, you may be like, really? This is not math? And no, not math. So with that said, I want to bring us to our students because that's why you're here, really. I want you to think about, what do you wish for your students? When they're faced with a messy problem, when they're faced with something that's ill-defined, what do you wish for them? I would like you to think about it. I want you to write it in the chat, but not press enter for about 20 seconds. This is virtual equivalent of don't raise your hand in a classroom. So 1 word, 2 words, what do you wish your students would do when faced with these problems? And I will be quiet. Not yet, not yet, not yet. Don't hit enter, don't hit enter, not yet. Hold it, hold it. 10 more seconds. Okay, go for it. Hit enter. What did you write? And now I want you to scroll up and down and see what people are saying. Look at the things that we want for our students. And chances are, even if you didn't write certain words, when you're reading what your colleagues are writing, you're going, yes, yes. So we know the destination. Half of our job is done. But how do we get there? What stands in the way of student success? Now, there are many factors, many factors, and many of those factors are completely outside of our sphere of control. They are. I'm going to mention 4, and hopefully at least some of those will resonate with the obstacles that you see when you work with the students. The first one is lack of persistence. The kiddos give up way too soon when faced with messy problems. They just give up way too soon. Lack of prior knowledge, and boy, the past 2 years definitely have not helped with this. And if you're always trying to fill in the gaps from the year before, how are you going to get to everything this year? The learned helplessness, we see this more and more, especially with older students. And then a lack of opportunities, especially inside of a traditional curriculum, to teach critical thinking and creativity. So those are the 4 big obstacles that we believe that if students are engaged in design challenge, we could at least minimize, if not completely eliminate. So let's see if we can convince you of that. What is design challenge? Well, simply put, design challenge is a learning and teaching experience that uses design thinking process. Now, the actual design cycle may look different. It definitely may look different, but the core of it will stay the same. In the next 45 minutes, you will probably have some questions that you will want to ask. And because we only have a small, relatively short amount of time, we will try to address those questions at the end about the design challenge and everything that I'm about to share. But what I would like you to do, and I'm going to ask Zach if he could do this for me, we are going to put a parking lot document in the chat. Or Kelly, thank you so much. I would like you to click on this and have it open. If at any point you have a question, I want you to type it in there. You can also share it in the chat, but if you put it in that document, the team members that we have, as well as our partners, are monitoring that so they can answer those questions in real time. Because I know that sometimes we get so stuck on certain question and we can't focus on other things. This way, if you have any questions, you can go to that document and put it in there. Okay, so coming back to the design cycle in itself can look different. And as you will see in the next few minutes, I will share multiple examples. The core of it will remain the same. It always starts with a problem that the students are invested in. After all, students and people in general, if we don't care about the problem, it's hard to be invested and put a lot of effort in. So we always start with the problem that we care about, and then we learn about it. That's it. Brainstorming research is just a fancy way of saying we learn. The students develop solutions, they hopefully build prototypes and models, and then they try it out. And if it's not good enough, or if they believe that it could be improved, they take the feedback that they get from others and they improve on it. And oftentimes they go through it multiple times. The iteration process can take several cycles. And then finally, they share their solution with the audience that's as invested in solving that problem as they are. That is the core of Design Challenge. Now, the important things to keep in mind, this has to be relevant. And as you will see, the OSLN Design Challenge question is very relevant. It will require collaboration and communication. And this is something that's really important to develop in our students. And then it is very accessible. Design Challenge is a learning experience that every student can access. And instead of me trying to convince you of this now, let me share a few examples of what this could look like. And then hopefully you will definitely agree with me that regardless of a student, the prior knowledge, their experiences of learning disability, whatever it is that the obstacle may be, they can engage with the Design Challenge. And of course, the beauty of Design Challenge is that students take knowledge from other courses, they apply it to solve the problem, and then whatever is learned during the Design Challenge, they can take it out to the same classes. So we have the flow of information. This year's Design Challenge is all about infrastructure. STEMbuildsOhio. Here is the overarching question. How can you, and by you we mean students, improve your school, community, or world by reimagining an existing physical space, product, service, or a system so that it's more equitable, accessible, or efficient? What a powerful question, and what a wide scope. And it's purposely designed to be that way so that your students and you can decide what part of this you want to focus on. So we're going to try something, and I want you to humor me. I can't really check if you're doing it or not, so I'm going to trust that you are. I want you to forget about your students for 30 seconds. We'll come back to them. I want you to think about yourself, the impact, the connection that you have with this question. I want you to think about, if I asked you this question, what would you focus on? And I don't want you to share it in the chat. I'm going to be quiet for 10 seconds, and I want you to think and allow that to come to your mind. What would you care about, and what would you want to learn more about? 10 seconds. So is something coming to you? Is there a part of it that you're going, oh, okay, I care about that? I'm going to share a few examples as we go on that definitely came up to me when I was thinking about this problem, and then I was living life, that I was like, oh my God, this would be a phenomenal Design Challenge question to ask my students. So When you work with your students, we want them to have that freedom to develop that problem, but your guidance is definitely needed. So let's talk about that. What does this look like in your grade level? Now, very quickly in the chat, if you don't mind letting me know, what's a grade band of students that you work with? If you're in a classroom, it's going to be an easy answer. If you are with maybe an organization, after school, nonprofit, maybe it's just K through 12. So just give me an idea who we have in the room. Oh, we have all grade levels. Amazing. So I'm going to go through the grade levels, but I want you to keep in mind, and I'm going to say this over and over, the core of design challenge remains the same. Of course, the complexity and the depth will depend on the age of our kiddo. So let's start with the little ones. K to 2. Can you do this with little ones? Yes, absolutely. You can do this with little ones. Their imagination is amazing. So what does the design cycle look like? Again, so many out there. Please do not think that the one that we have on our slide is the only one. It's the one that I thought looked the best, and I wanted to include it and share it with you. When you work with the little ones, they still start by wondering. They ask questions, and then they imagine all the solutions. This is where they excel, maybe a little bit too much. They come up with the solutions, they plan, and hopefully they build. They build to the best of their abilities. And then even at this age, we want them to look at the product and reflect. Can you improve it? So the design cycle still has the same steps. Let's look at some examples of what that sub-question that's related to infrastructure, that's related to that overarching question could be for K to 2. We could ask them to really examine the accessibility of their schools and neighborhoods. And the idea came from a teacher who had a student who recently broke his leg. Well, they've really explored the idea of how can this kiddo get around everywhere in a school that wasn't designed for this. The students can do the same thing with the playgrounds or the neighborhood. They could look at product design. They could look at their classroom furniture and really think about how they like to learn. And then think about redesigning some of it to fit their learning needs. I think we can all guess where that would go, but that's okay. And then the idea of automation. Just imagine the potential, the imagination, if you ask them to explore the potential for the things that could fly and drive and just move on its own. So these are just some examples of questions that are related to our overarching question. Now, every question that you ask K to 2 learners to do could be scaled up to older age. So in grades 3 to 5, we see the similar process, but where they differ a little bit is in the planning portion, because they're older enough and I think a little bit more advanced when it comes to their abstract thinking. So then when they think about the imagination and brainstorming, they're able to be more aware of what's possible, what's feasible, and what's not. So the, again, design cycle looks pretty much the same, but we can see a little bit more depth in the imagine and planning phase, as well as the improvement phase. With older kiddos, they're able to reflect on the feedback a little bit more. You can provide more feedback, and the iteration process can include multiple cycles. So again, same questions from K to 2. I could ask 3 to 5 learner, but let's look at some other examples. My goal today is to spark your imagination so that when you leave this call, you say, okay, her examples were okay, but my example, the one that I'm going to do with my kids, is the one that's going to really be engaging for my kiddos. So think about this. I mean, let's allow that inner child to come out using drones. I could stop there and probably everyone is going, But now let's think about really application of this. Using drones for playground safety. Using drones for school community. If you are in the district that has a lot of walkers, this would be a great problem to explore. Thinking about the playground, the community playground, school playground, and designing it for accessibility, equitable, and inclusiveness. And what does that mean? The themes that we often don't explore with grades 3 to 5 that we should. And then making everyday items more accessible for younger students. Can they do product design? And yes, I included shoelaces because even though I have teenagers, I still remember that age and how much we invested in Velcro. Or maybe thinking about making everyday items more accessible for elderly population. So this is all related to that overarching question. So middle schoolers, if you're teaching grades 6 to 8, well, we're all impressed, first of all. That's an interesting age. And boy, I think that you can really bang on the fact that in middle school, they start exploring different subjects. And I know that we see electives in K through 5 as well, but students in grades 6 to 8, they make those connections across disciplines a little bit easier. So I wanted to include this image of a design cycle. And probably, even though I'm going to show you one more for high school, I would say that this one is something that this design cycle has everything you need, regardless of if you're teaching middle school or high school. So what's the main difference in middle school, comparing it to K through 5 learner? It's that idea of really understanding the constraints on your solution. Students at this age are quite capable of thinking about constraints, maybe financial constraints, maybe money, materials, time, and also they really understand the success for criteria. What needs to happen in order for that solution to be feasible? So we see in middle school kids exploring this area of design cycle a lot more. And of course, when we think about communication at this age, the options for how they want to communicate their answer really grows. So it's not just about presentations, but they can do a lot more. So we see that creativity come out a lot in middle school. So let me share a few examples, spark your creativity. Electric vehicles. And I blame Kelly for this one. Her car gave me the idea. I was like, my God, I would love to have an electric vehicle, but I actually can't think of a place. And I live in Akron. So if you live close to me, you're more than welcome to share information. But I'm like, where's the charging stations? Couldn't kids really think about, like, what's the possibility for a network? What would that look like in their neighborhood, in their county? Designing the garden and park. This is urban development. If you're a social studies teacher, your wheels are probably turning now. And then let's think about technology aspect. Designing apps that combat negative impact of social media on children. All of that is related to our overarching question. For those of you who teach high schoolers, and as a former high school teacher, I can tell you that anything that you can do, regardless of what subject you teach, that's transdisciplinary, really helps your students see the connection and purpose of everything that they do throughout the school day. So what's the major difference? Well, that exposure to different content is the major difference between a high schooler and K through 8 learner. When you think about a typical team of students, 4 or 5, regardless of how many you want to have when they engage in design challenge, those students are probably taking a very diverse type of classes. And now they're going to take all of those classes and apply to a design challenge. So this is probably as complex as it gets. But even though there are so many bits and pieces, and we'll share the slide. So if you don't see something on the slide, don't worry about it. We will share this with you. But I want you to notice that the core of it stays the same. It starts with a problem that they care about. Then they learn, they develop ideas. Then they create the solution. and then they share. Now, obviously, you can have higher expectations when it comes to certain parts of a design cycle. When they think about proposing a solution, you can have them really perform risk analysis. That's the one thing that we can see our students do. When we think about building a prototype, it can be very complex depending on your resources, both financial and related to time. So the depth of it can change, but the design thinking process remains the same regardless of the age of a learner. So here are a few examples for high school. And again, you can scale it down to lower grade levels. Designing or redesigning traffic flow during arrivals or dismissals. Anyone in the room has done dismissal duty, bus duty, and hated your life? And you're like, oh my God, who came up with this? Or if you're a parent picking up your child and thinking, if someone could just get me out of here, like just lift me up and take me out. I think we have all wasted a lot of time in parking lots. So I think we can all say that this would be a good problem to explore. And then, you know, we have electric vehicles, but can they be scaled up? What about shifting our ground transportation of products, fancy name for trucks? How about we shift it to electric vehicles? Is that possible? I mean, this is the scope of this question is pretty wide. And this would be something, or school buses, oh my God, Liz, absolutely. Think about this problem. Every subject in high school, well, maybe I shouldn't say every, I'm trying to see how gym would fit here, but almost every class in high school could fit into this. And then I want you to think in the day and age of Amazon and DoorDash, how come we're not exploring different delivery systems for everyday use? I mean, so many times, especially during winter storms, when my Amazon package is late, I think, can they just fly to me? I mean, there has to be a way. So those are questions that our students would be invested in. And again, they're just here to spark your ideas and your imagination. How are we doing? Hopefully okay. You're nodding your heads. I know it. I can't see it, but I know it. So let's talk about duration of design challenge. And I'm going to pause it here. And I want to remind you of something that I said at the very beginning. I want you to recall the obstacles that I mentioned. Design challenge is not something that's supposed to be an add-on. It's supposed to complement your instructional method. It's not supposed to take away from your content delivery. It's supposed to promote creativity and critical thinking, and you should see the outcomes of that when you teach the rest of your content. So let's talk about time first, and then let's talk about content. The duration really depends on the scope of the problem. Some of the examples I showed you could be done in a relatively short amount of time. You know, few classes, again, depends on your grade level for sure. But you know, if you are elementary grade teacher, then you see your kiddos a little bit more during the day, so you could do it in a few days. If you're a high school teacher, if you teach on a block, it's a little bit different. So this really will depend on scope of your problem and then time you have available with your students. I also want you to think about what subjects you want to integrate. It is impossible to do a design challenge with just one subject. The beauty of a design challenge problem is that it is authentic, it is relevant. So there is absolutely nothing in real life that only spans across one discipline. And if there is, maybe it's not complex enough for our students to engage in. So the subjects that you want to integrate will really drive how long you need for your design challenge. So I could see you taking few classes, maybe during 1 week, Or maybe you'll decide that this is something that you're going to do over the course of a marketing period or even a month. And you'll say, okay, maybe I'm going to have my kids learn the content as we go through the marketing period and come back to the design challenge problem every week and then apply that knowledge that they've learned to that problem. So it doesn't have to be done in 1 week or few days. This could be something that they come back to. Think about a typical problem-based learning or project-based learning. We don't expect that to be one and done. We expect that to be anchor for student learning. So what does it look like for your subject? Well, this really depends. If you work with students in an after-school program, if you work with your students in if you're a STEM teacher, or you have a time, some schools have integrated time where students just engage with problems, then this probably is not a big issue for you. But if you're teaching core content, math, science, and you're like, my God, I have so many standards that I have to teach, then I can understand the hesitancy. So let's talk about this a little bit. Now, we're only together for 1 hour. So even though I would love to spend lots of time on this, we can't. But that doesn't mean that you won't have a chance to reach out and ask specific questions. And I encourage you to do that. But let's talk about our subjects for a little bit. And no, I didn't include all of them. So if I didn't include your subject, I apologize. But again, I'm going to repeat that Design Challenge is a truly integrated task. And that's the power of it. When we learn things that have purpose, that we know where they fit in the world around us, we retain that knowledge. So when we teach through Design Challenge, when we teach our students to solve problems by applying design thinking process, that sticks. So when I think about science in the Design Challenge, I think about method. When I think about ELA, I think about communication. Art is an expression. So these disciplines have purpose. And if at this point you're going, yeah, but I teach math, okay, let's talk about it. So depending on what you teach, and I included only, slide is only so big, so I just included a limited number of examples. But I want you to think about this. My favorite example, and if it's not obvious by now, I'm a former math teacher. So my favorite example is a product design. And I don't know if you know this, but Battelle is responsible for the design of Pringles. I think that was one of the major reasons I decided to work with this company. I mean, how many of you looked at Pringles and said, oh my God, look at the shape? Well, mathematicians at Battelle are responsible for that. So product design has so much to do with mathematics. Now, think about art. Well, we should all think about art, regardless of what subject we teach. But think about architecture. And again, I go back to mathematics, but there are other areas that you can go into. In social studies, urban development. I think that's probably one area that our students should really engage with. And then, of course, science, or maybe you're a health teacher. The one example that I had to exclude was access to a health facility or access to exercise facilities. So you can still have a problem that highlights your content, and other content are offering support. Again, we are limited on time, so if you want to reach out to me and be like, hey, do you want to brainstorm and do you have any ideas? I teach 6th grade science. I bet we can help. So talking about supports, and I know I'm sharing a lot of information here, so hopefully we're all hanging in there. When we think about the supports for Design Challenge, we have plenty. I'm going to highlight few, and remember, be on the lookout for an email from me probably tomorrow, and all of that will be in it. So the first place is our website. So the website has plenty of resources for you. The good starting point, if you are new to Design Challenge, is Design Challenge 101. We mentioned the steps to the design cycle. They're all listed there, and also the teaching resources. If you're thinking, she talked about developing a solution. Are there any resources for that? Check out our website and see what we have available for you. If you are okay with that, but you're like, infrastructure and design, is there anything out there? And I know we can all Google, but how many times have you Googled something for 1 hour and then went, oh my God, I am as lost as I was, maybe even more than at the beginning of this Googling session. So instead of doing that, go to this webpage, still on our website, and then look at the resources that have already been collected for you. And yes, there's always more, but this is a great starting point. Now, Design Challenge is actually rolled out at the beginning of a school year. Don't worry, you're not late. But every fall, we do webinars where our colleagues from Metro High School actually host these. So teachers who have implemented this, who have done this with their students, they share their experience and expertise, and we record them. So if you're like, design-based thinking, please check out the webinar, go through it. They're really, really informative and really helpful. So those are also available for your viewing on our website. And then our email is right there, and I will share my personal email as well by the end. Just reach out to us. We're teachers. We're used to collaborating with others. And if you have a question, you just let us know, and we'll try and answer it to the best of our ability. And then, if you are, I have 2 teenage boys, so anything about flying things, drones are big in our house, I have to say. So if you think that your students would really enjoy that, exploring that idea of drones, or maybe they would love the idea of exploring electric vehicles, again, this area is growing, then you are in luck, because our colleagues, our partners from Drive Ohio will not only meet with you, a teacher, to talk about this, they will also arrange a classroom visit for your students to help you support this work. So there are so many supports available. All you have to do is take advantage of them. And again, their information, their email is right on the slide, so you will have that tomorrow. Check it out. Those are 2 topics very much related to our overarching question that I think many students would find very, very engaging and very relevant. So if at this point you're going, okay, where do I start? All this information, she kind of got me thinking about this. Maybe I'm going to do this. Well, you start by joining our Design Challenge community. Now, if Kelly or Zach doesn't mind just dropping that into the chat, that would be great. Again, you will have it tomorrow as well. But if you are like, I'm going to click on it right now, it's open in my browser, I'm coming back to it, you would have to register, so then we know that you're interested. It adds you to our email list, and then we're able to share information about, well, a few more things that I'm about to share with you. And of course, exploring our website. I think that's something that you should definitely do. Okay, so, and I know I'm trying to get through this, so if you have any questions, we'll be able to answer them within the time we have together. But engagement in Design Challenge by itself is so beneficial for students. But we'd like to take it a step further. So we celebrate Design Challenge completion every year, and we have actually our stage showcase. It is a competition. It does have a competition piece to it. And this year, so mark your calendars, it's on May 12th, 2022. It is a virtual event. Usually it's in person, but we just have to get through this virtual part. Hopefully this is the last year we're doing it, and next year we'll be able to see everyone in person. But what we actually want schools to do is have their own school showcase or classroom or grade level showcase. Give all of your students an opportunity to share what they've done, to receive feedback from others, to show their prototypes, to share how invested and engaged they were with the problem. And then you decide, however you want to do that, which team will represent your school at our state showcase. If you're a K through 8 school, then we actually accept a representative team from each grade band. So if you have multiple grade bands, K5, 6, 8, 9, 12, you could send a representative team from each grade band. Now, we do have participation guidelines. They're linked on the slides, and I will include them in the email. We may have few minutes at the end, so if you have burning questions about it, we can answer them for you today. If not, you will have all the participation guidelines in your inbox tomorrow. The other date to keep in mind is that submission deadline for the state showcase is April 21st, which means if you're planning on participating, you need to backtrack and plan when you're going to do this with your kiddos. And then they would have to apply for the state showcase in time. So that's the deadline, 2 dates to keep in mind. Okay, before I share the line, because remember that problem from the beginning was the next line? We're finally back there. I said 45 minutes and oh my God, I'm 3 minutes away from that goal. Before I share that, I'm gonna pause here and I'm gonna ask, are there any questions? And you can unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat.
Can I just share some of the questions coming in on the parking lot?
Yes, please.
And while you guys are, feel free to unmute yourself and ask additional questions. But are there students who are involved in judging at the state showcase?
You know what? As of right now, we're working on our panel of judges, but what a great idea. So we don't have our panel finalized just yet, but to have a student voice, maybe some of our former participants, maybe even students who have excelled in the prior design challenge, I am liking that a lot.
And Sandra, if I can hop in as well, I know we had discussed a way for students to stay engaged during the showcase. So we will probably develop some type of resource or tool that we can distribute to all of the participating schools to allow their students to kind of grade and follow along with the processes as the other students are presenting. Yeah, just so they can kind of stay on top of things, stay engaged, thinking about how they can improve their own showcase skills and presentation skills as well.
Thank you, Zach. You have a lot better memory than I do. We talked about student choice award, right? That's why Kelly asked it that way. And then I completely, yeah, she's nodding her head. Thank you. Thank God Zach and Kelly have better memory than I do. So let's rewound. To answer your question, yes, we will have student choice award. Absolutely. There we go. Fix that one. Go ahead.
Since it's virtual, does the submission need to be in a certain type of format?
Yes, we do have different guidelines for the different grade bands. So you will see that, and I'll talk just briefly about that, but more information is in our document. If you are 6 to 12 team, the students will submit a 5-minute video with the accompanying presentation. And they will also have a choice to submit one more artifact, maybe a document, an image, or something like that to support their submission. If you're K through 5, you will have an option to do the same thing. If you wanted to submit a video with the accompanying artifact, we would provide a little bit of guidance with maybe a template for the presentation to help younger learners, but you will have that option. Or if you work with younger students and that's not an option, you will have a chance for your students to create a traditional poster. It can be just a poster board, or it can be a digital poster. And then we would ask you to record your team as they share some of the process that they engaged with. So. Okay, anything else, Kelly? And I don't know if I missed anything in the chat.
You know, there's a good one that I think it's just worthwhile having a discussion on, which is, would we generally want to have students collaboratively determine the question that they explore?
And I would say yes. I think that it would be very helpful. Sometimes the openness of the overarching question can be a little bit overwhelming. It also depends on your students if they're used to attacking these open problems, providing a little bit of guidance and maybe saying, okay, let's think about what we're interested in. Do we want to focus on service? Do we want to focus on a product or a space, and narrowing it down there? I think that would be a good starting point. So yes, I think having them collaboratively come up with a problem is a good idea, but be prepared to, that can take a while, because if you're looking for consensus among 30, 40 students, you're going to be there for a while. So you may have to think about what are the constraints, what are the parameters, and share that with them before they start.
Stephen, I really appreciate your question in terms of long-term planning. He asked, this year's topic is awesomely open-ended and flexible. Is it likely that future years will keep that open nature? Is it likely it will be more tightly focused as in previous years? We're having that conversation, and we value your input as educators going through this process right now. So that is a conversation that we're having. We would love your input at the end of the year after we do this design challenge.
If Kelly, if you don't mind, if you can pull up the guidelines document, because if folks don't want to wait, I can understand that if you have more questions. My explanation was rather short, so it would be great if you share that in the chat, and then everyone can have it. Thank you, Kelly. Any other questions in the document, or that maybe I missed in the chat? Okay, so that was a lot of information. Hopefully you found it beneficial and have a better idea of what Design Challenge is all about.
We have another question which came in. Sorry guys, I'm still recovering from a cough here. Can a school participate in the Design Challenge with more than one team and one grade band?
No. Because we have so many schools that will apply for this to keep it under a feasible number of teams that our judges will evaluate. We are keeping it to one team per grade band.
And let me add some context there. Your whole school, all 5 grade levels, can definitely participate in the Design Challenge at a local level. That's one of the reasons that we encourage schools to have a school-wide showcase if they have multiple levels. In some cases, we have teachers who do it across one grade level, so they have a, like a grade level showcase. If you have multiple levels at the same school participating, we encourage you to have a school-wide Design Challenge. And then as a school community, you will identify one that will move forward to the state competition.
Kelly, and I had this question actually before our meeting. It was from a school that's K through 6, and it was a similar question, and we talked about different grade bands. Grade 6 would be a different grade band, so they would be able to submit or send 2 teams to participate, one for grade 6 and then one representing K through 5. So I think that it's important that all students have a chance to present what they've learned, especially because these problems will be so relevant to them.
One of the, I know we talk a lot about the negatives of a virtual showcase, but we're planning a really exciting virtual showcase for students this year. And because it's virtual, you can have students who wouldn't typically participate or be able to come join in. So we'll be, as we're developing out those details, sharing that with you. That way you can plan accordingly. But for now, save the date and know that if you want others that, did a local level design challenge to be able to see and participate and maybe vote, do the student choice award, that sort of thing. The virtual showcase will be open to others. We'll just be limited on the number of student teams presenting.
I see a question from Ashley. Do you have any suggestions for the presentations? Ashley, is this question on for the school showcase, how students can present? I'm trying to think of the work I've done, and I'm going to ask everyone else to jump in if they have any suggestions. It would really depend on the scale of the showcase. If we're talking about one grade level, then having an event where students give a 3 to 5 minute presentation. If you have no more than 10 groups, that would be an option, or having stations where people from a school can go around and ask students to share a little bit about their presentation, about their projects. So almost like a poster session, but with no posters, because we're not asking, at least not secondary students, for posters. So they would have to talk about the work, maybe share the work that they've done. So
I would actually love to hear from other teachers on the call who have done that. I know I personally have gone to a few where it's been kind of like science fair style, where they've invited local industry and community partners to come in, and each group of judges has maybe 4 or 5 that they're assessing, and they have a template. And so they're all happening simultaneously, and you have a window to get those done and judged. But I'm curious from the other teachers on the call who have done this previously, if you have anything that has worked really well for you.
and I don't know if we have anyone who has done this before, so.
I see some common names in here, but if people are tired and don't want to come off mute, that's fine.
Don't call on anyone, Kelly.
I'm not going
You
to.
mentioned a lot of the models I've seen. Things you can think about are like, especially at the younger grades, if you can have an open house where parents can come in, again, depending on COVID this year or other ways, So think about how you can give them an audience that they care about sharing their idea with, whether that's peers or parents or experts in the field, if it's somebody from the local hospital, if it's a medical thing, but finding that way to make the audience feel authentic and engaging for your students.
Thank you, Stephen. And you really have hit it, like 2 things that really resonated with me as you were speaking. Parents, families, I think that's important for students to have them there, and also community partners, because when we can do things that are so important, that someone from the community, a business and industry comes into our school and they listen to us talk, boy, that's very empowering for a child. Okay, with 7 minutes to share, and if there are any other questions, keep typing and we'll pause and we'll answer it. And again, you have our email, you can email us. I am going to, and if Stephen is still there, Stephen, I think you got it. So let me go to the next page. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, the next line. Stephen, do you want to tell us what the next line is and how we know? I mean, it's going to show up. Okay, what's the next line?
From this line?
Yep.
So I see 1, 1, and then 1, 2, and then 2 1s.
Very good. Did you guys catch it? Did you catch that? He didn't say there's a pattern. He said, I see. So what do you see right above? What do you see right above? How many 1s do you see? You see 3 1s, 2 2s, and 1 1. It has nothing to do with mathematics. So, Stephen, good job. So, I highly recommend doing this with your students. So,
Stephen, had you seen this one before?
When I was a really small kid, and it took me a moment, I was like, wait, I have seen this. Yeah, so it's nothing magical about my brain. It's just.
I love when little kids are smarter than us. I love it.
Yeah, kids get it because they haven't been, and I always say, I don't want to say ruined, but they haven't been influenced by traditional schooling. They're now looking for patterns. You just gave them things and they see. And I love, Stephen, that you used that word. Okay, so we are going to stay online. If you have any questions just for us, I'm going to stop sharing and stop recording, maybe. For everyone else, thank you.